In this video, I am going to share with you some findings that I've come across with relation to Magic Lantern, specifically using the 5D Mark III. Look at the shadows over here. Look at how much is able to be extracted. Look at the highlights over here by the sunset and how much of that is able to be extracted. This is just absolutely stunning, absolutely amazing. This is the original clip after I processed the raw, exported JPEG. And then when I apply a noise reduction, this is the difference. 1, 2, 1, 2. What I find here will also carry over to the use of something like the EOS M with Magic Lantern or Magic Lantern Crop Mood. So what I wanted to see specifically was, what is the difference in file sizes when you are recording between 10-bit, 14-bit, or if you're recording, not recording, but when you transfer those same recordings, those files from MLV RAW into Cinema DNG, whether it's lossless or completely uncompressed, as well as the JPEG files when they are processed using Adobe Camera Raw specifically. What is the difference in file sizes? Each of these files that I have recorded here with the 5D Mark III, these are 5-minute files. Essentially, they might range between 5 minutes and 1 second, 5 minutes and 5 seconds, but they're essentially just about 5 minutes long. And so what I did was, first I recorded in 14-bit in 2.8K. In my experience using Magic Lantern Raw, 14-bit with 2.8K is actually very stable and reliable. I feel like I can continue recording until my card fills up. If I go more than that, if I go to 3K, then what'll happen is I might get, depending on how much data I'm capturing based on light, then I might get a few minutes of recording to a few seconds of recording. So the 2.8K seems to be the threshold. This is what I discovered. This is using card spanning, where I'm recording between the compact flash card and the SD card at the same time with global RAW when I set it to kill global RAW. So these are all the things that this is basically 2.8K gives me something close to a 2x crop. So it's almost like I'm recording Micro Four Thirds, but it's very good quality. I can get, I think, 1.8x crop at about 3K. But then, you could always use a wider angle, wider focal length. In this case, this is 11:16 or a 14:20 f2. This, the clip that I wanted to showcase, these are all recorded using the 11:16 from Tokina. And I tried to kind of maintain a similar field of view across the board. But generally, what I found is that 2.8K 14-bit raw 5-minute file is about 33 gigs. If I convert the MLV RAW to Cinema DNG lossless, but Cinema DNG uncompressed is about 55 gigs, so about 20 plus gig file size difference. Now, what happens if I go from 14-bit down to 10-bit? And does 10-bit give me a lot of latitude, or do I lose anything? So what I found is that a 5-minute file, 2.8K raw, 10-bit, instead of 33 gigs, it's 17.7, almost half the size. And if I did uncompress, it's about 40 gigs. So the same didn't translate over into uncompressed raw, but that's okay. And so then what I did was I did 1080p raw, which gave me the full sensor field of view. And for about 5 minutes, 14-bit raw, I got about 13 gig file, significantly smaller. And then if it was Cinema DNG uncompressed, it was about 25 gigs. So depending on what resolution you record at, the file sizes will be appropriately different. But the question now is 1080p raw versus 1080 versus 2.8K raw 14-bit is 13 gigs versus 33 gigs, less than half the file size. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, here's the footage. You tell me, do you see a difference? Do you notice a difference in the quality of the sharpness? Now, what I've done here is the footage in this timeline, in whatever the footage is, whatever resolution I captured at, whether it was 1080p or 2.8K, I have then upscaled that to 4K. And so what you're looking at is whatever footage is been processed and then upres to 4K. So is there a difference? Do you notice a difference between the 1080p and the 2.8K when watching it in 4K resolution on a television versus on a mobile phone. Let me know in the comments below if you notice anything. So that's now the thing is, when I take the same the 1080p file that's 14-bit, 13 gigs, lossless, uncompressed. Well, actually it is compressed, but it's lossless raw. When I process it, we're looking at 30.8 gigs, whereas those same JPEG files, when they're unprocessed, they are 17 gigs. So when you process the JPEG files, you extract the dynamic range, you bring out the colors, all the information, then is baked, then is exported and rendered out. You almost double the size of the files. One of the things I wanted to also showcase to you is, what is the difference? How much difference do you see? So this here is Adobe Camera Raw, one of the frames that I had extracted. This is the original file. Now you'll notice I messed up the white balance. I didn't set the white balance appropriately, but I knew it was capturing raw, so that's not a big deal. So just a quick pro tip is that if you are trying to capture footage and you're capturing it in MP4 or any kind of encoded format, when it comes to color grading, you want to ensure there's a couple things that you got right. One of them is that you got the white balance right. If your white balance is off, you can try correcting it in post, but if it's not raw, then it's still going to mess up some of your other colors, especially skin tones. So that's the challenge when it comes to, like, you get your white balance right, you get your exposure right, and then after same time, you also get your ISO settings with relation to the noise to signal ratio, whether or not you're at the native or close to the native ISO. You get these three things right, you're gonna get a very good image, especially when you're dealing with footage that is not raw. Now, if you're shooting raw, you can make some of these mistakes like I did here. I didn't set the white balance appropriately, but it's one of those things where you can go ahead and fix that by finding something that's white. So in this case, like I have something white here, and I can fix that, and boom, now I got the white balance right. And this is the footage that this is still like what's like straight out of camera, right? So again, this was the before, the messed up footage, and this is the after. Look at how much difference, how much information is captured and retained within the raw, right? So again, look at the shadows over here, right? And then now look at how much is able to be extracted. Look at the highlights over here by the sunset and how much of that is able to be extracted. This is just absolutely stunning, absolutely amazing. And so if I were to bring this into Premiere, the other thing that I also wanted to showcase, take a look at this. This is the wheel well. This is footage that I have applied noise reduction to, right? This is the original, right? This is the original clip after I processed the raw, exported JPEG. And then when I apply a noise reduction, this is the difference. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, what happens now, you do have the option of applying noise reduction within Adobe Camera Raw. The question now is, how is the quality of that? Well, if you apply noise reduction in Adobe Camera Raw, this is the actual result that comes out. Compare this to this. Specifically pay attention to the detail in the wheel well and the tire and the shadows over here. This is, using Adobe Camera Raw's noise reduction versus using Neat Video noise reduction. So much more detail, significantly more detail between the two. You even look at the details on the car that my kid is driving, the Audi logo, for example, right? This is, I guess, is over sharpened versus something that looks a little bit more natural, over sharpened, natural. And I'm just trying to figure out what the appropriate workflow would be. Adobe Camera Raw, and they're trying to figure out, like, if I'm capturing raw, what are the settings that I want to be able to capture? And that's part of the reason why I shot these clips, to also see, am I getting, for the amount of space that the footage takes up between these files, right? If we look here, let's come back, right? So if I look at just lossless, I don't think I'm going to do any more uncompressed footage, right? I don't think it makes any sense. Lossless is good enough. And the footage that I just showed you, this is 1080p. There is so much information that is still within the raw files in terms of the file sizes alone. You get, in 5 minutes, I have a 13 gig file versus a 33 gig file. That's the main difference. Even if I go higher resolution, it's 13 gigs and 17 gigs, right? So it's not that much of a difference in resolution, but in bit depth, that's where a lot of the data is eating up storage. So the question is, how much of that is actually useful to you when you are editing and color grading, and how much can one extract or get from Adobe Camera Raw? I don't know. That is something that requires further exploration and experimentation, but I am just genuinely happy about what I'm able to extract from these raw images. And I believe a lot of that would also carry over into the crop sensor Canon cameras as well. But that is something to do as a comparison for a later time. But yeah, hope you guys found this of value. I will see you soon.